Last weekend, Viktor Orban's Fidesz party, Austria's far-right Freedom Party, and the Czech ANO party, led by billionaire Andrej Babiš, announced that they were forming a new alliance in the EU called the Patriots for Europe. At their inaugural press conference, Orban promised that the newly formed alliance would soon become the largest faction on the European right, claiming that it would happen, quote, within days. But as of Thursday morning, only one other party, Portugal's anti-establishment Chega party, has joined the alliance, and it's now not clear whether they'll be able to find enough members to meet the formal threshold for a group before the de facto deadline of July 8th, which is when all of the right-wing groups are having their first constitutive meetings. So in this video, we're going to take a look at this new alliance, their policy platform, and which other parties might join them in the coming days. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. So, to understand this story, it's probably best to start with Fidesz's lonely history in the European Parliament. From 2000 until 2019, Fidesz was a member of the centre-right European People's Party, or EPP, and a pretty big part of it as well, with Fidesz usually returning roughly 12 MEPs. However, tensions between the EPP and Fidesz first emerged in the 2010s, as Orban's politics became increasingly authoritarian and Eurosceptic. Now, while EPP members were broadly supportive of Orban over the 2013 Tavares reports, which accused Orban of illegitimately amending the Hungarian constitution, relations deteriorated after the migrant crisis and Orban's subsequent Eurosceptic pivot. After the Hungarian government ran ads openly attacking Jean-Claude Juncker and George Soros during the 2019 European parliamentary elections, the EPP decided that it had had enough. Fidesz were suspended in March, and 2 years later, they were formally kicked out. Since then, Fidesz has been without a group, making it one of the largest non-affiliated parties in the European Parliament. Now, there were rumours that Fidesz might join the more right-wing ECR group a while ago, but many ECR members didn't like Orban's relatively pro-Russia position. Then in January, the even more right-wing ID group invited Fidesz to join their ranks, and for a moment it looked like it might work, given the close relationship between Orban and Marine Le Pen, whose national rally heads up ID. And in fact, ID are probably the most Ukraine-skeptic group in Parliament. In the end, though, Orban refused, both because it still claims that Fidesz is fundamentally a centre-right party, and because, as we now know, he was planning on making his own group. Anyway, the second biggest party in this new group will be the ANO, who have 7 MEPs to Fidesz's 11. ANO are led by Czech billionaire Andrej Babiš, and they've been the largest party in the Czech Republic since 2017. While an anti-Babiš Liberal alliance has been in power since 2021, it's very unpopular, and ANO came out on top at the European elections. Now, ANO are often described as populist, but their policy platform is difficult to pin down, because it sort of shifts depending on the demands of the voter base, which mostly comprises of poorer Czech households. Interestingly, ANO joined Macron's Renew group in the European Parliament back in 2014, when they were known as an anti-corruption party with left-leaning economic policies. However, as they become more conservative and Eurosceptic, their relations with Renew have deteriorated, and after the European Parliament elections, they finally left the group. Finally, the third party in this new grouping are Austria's Freedom Party, or FPO. The FPO are currently in opposition in Austria, but polls suggest that they're the most popular party, and they came out on top at the European elections too, winning 6 MEPs. The FPO are often described as far-right, and their Nazi roots meant that, when they came to power in 2000, the rest of the EU essentially cut diplomatic ties with Austria. They're staunchly anti-immigration, conspicuously Eurosceptic, and oppose support to Ukraine on the grounds that it's inconsistent with Austria's neutrality. FPO lawmakers actually walked out when Zelensky made a speech to the Austrian parliament, and the party has repeatedly opposed sanctions against Russia. The FPO even signed a, quote, friendship treaty with Putin's United Russia Party in 2016, and in 2018, the then FPO foreign minister made headlines when she was filmed dancing with Vladimir Putin at her wedding. The FPO were previously a founding member of ID alongside Le Pen's National Rally, but they fell out with Le Pen over her decision to kick out the AfD after their lead candidate said that not all SS members were criminals. So given that these three are the Patriots for Europe's founding members, it should come as no surprise that the group is basically focused on three things: pushing the EU right on issues like the Green New Deal and migration, reforming the EU to shift the balance of power away from Brussels and towards national governments, and ending support for Ukraine. The group's so-called Patriotic Manifesto for a European Future is pretty forward-leaning and opens by claiming that the European Union has turned against Europeans and now represents interests that are contrary to the will of the nations that make up our European homeland. Anyway, when it was first announced, it looked plausible that the Patriots for Europe might indeed become the largest party on the European right, as Orban had claimed. Italy's Lega, one of the largest parties in ID, described the group as the, quote, most compelling alternative in Europe, and Poland's Law and Justice Party, currently the second biggest party in the ECR, said that they were, quote, 50-50 on joining the group. However, Lega haven't actually made any formal moves, and on Wednesday, Law and Justice announced that they'd be staying in the ECR instead, at least in part because Law and Justice are generally more pro-Ukraine than other members of the Patriots. On top of that, last week, the Slovak president, Peter Pellegrini, said that his SMER party, widely considered a potential candidate, were instead looking to rejoin the Socialists and Democrats grouping. At the time of writing, the only additional party to join the group is Portugal's anti-establishment Chega party. According to the European Parliament's rules, any group needs at least 23 MEPs from at least 7 EU member states. So Orban still needs to convince parties from at least 3 other countries in order to formally become a group and enjoy the relevant parliamentary privileges that come with that. While the formal deadline is July 15th, the practical deadline is July 8th, because that's when the right-wing groups had their first group meetings. Whether or not the Patriots succeed now really depends on Le Pen, who signaled that she'll make a decision on whether or not to join after the French legislative elections this Sunday. If she joins, then that'll probably be enough to take some of the ID group with her, and the Patriots could end up as the third or potentially even second largest right-wing group in Parliament. If she doesn't, however, it's hard to imagine them really amounting to anything. If you want to learn more, then check out Too Long, our 60-page, high-quality magazine full of TLDR's very best journalism. This issue is focused on the UK election, diving deep into the campaign, the results, and how the winners plan to fix Britain. It's more than just Britain, though, with stories including the European parliamentary elections, the countries likely to join the EU next, the latest from Gaza, the rise of Milei, and, of course, the US election. Now, we've decided to make the magazine for 2 reasons. Firstly, it allows our journalists to write in more detail, diving deeper and ignoring algorithmic restrictions to produce the best work we can. And secondly, it's a good way for you to support TLDR and will help us to produce free YouTube videos as long as we can. If you're interested, then you can pick up a copy from our website, where we're selling 2 editions of the magazine. Firstly, there's the standard edition, and then there's the premium edition, which gets your name printed in the thank you section of the magazine, access to our behind-the-scenes podcast, and exclusive access to our election night livestream, where we'll be reacting to the exit poll with you as it happens. Oh, and by the way, we're going to be making an issue of Too Long every 4 months. So if you want to ensure that you never miss an issue, then you can subscribe, which gets you a 25% discount. If you have more questions, there's a full Q&A linked in the description, where you'll also find a link to our store. And while you're there, make sure you use the code ELECTIONWEEK to get an additional £2 off any purchase. Thanks so much for hearing me out, and if you are interested, please do pick up a copy, as it's a great way to support our journalism and help us to continue making free YouTube videos as long as we can.